Hello, 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 I check 1, 2, 3, hello, 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 mic check 1, 2, 3, hello, hello, hello,
की बात करेंगे वो इसमें रिकॉर्ड हो जाएगी तो भाई थोड़ा सा देख लीजिए। हाँ सर।
इनको रिकॉर्डिंग कर लगा आप अहमद अली एक सेकंड
वो तो बहुत
रिकॉर्ड
अच्छा
कर दिया था ये।
अच्छा अच्छा यूट्यूब शो
अभी मैं सिंपल ऑन में दबाएंगे तो मैं जाते होंगे या तो पास में
अच्छा नहीं नहीं तो देखिए इतनी स्पेस इधर हो जाए बात चला दें शेयर के फोन जाएगा अभी आप चला दें चलता रहें अगर इसके बाद मसला
Defense attaché Egypt.
يعني you're speaking Arab different. Everything became Kuwait. No, Arab have big thing. ما شاء الله ما شاء الله. طب how we find Egypt? I wish Shani will give you a good impression. I am absolutely one of the yes. Inshallah, sir. Yes. Assalamu alaikum.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good morning, distinguished guests, respected panelists, member of the Academy, and dear students. We formally begin our today's event with recitation from Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبح لله من في السماوات وما في الأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا لم تقولون ما لا تفعلون كبر مقتا عند الله تقولوا ما لا تفعلون إن الله يحب الذين يقاتلون في سبيله صفا كأنهم بنيان مرصوص.
Sadaqallahu Azim. Now I request all to please rise in honor of our national anthem. Ladies and gentlemen, national songs inspire energy, strengthen patriotism, and connect us with our national heroes. This song is played to revive the spirit of Bunyanu Marsus and renew our collective passion and unity.
तैयार है तो हम तैयार हैं बनवाना मत हम तैयार हैं तरह के हम पहरेदार हैं अल्लाह का जो भी है गाने का मान जाति की खोज अब तक के जवान दिखलाए मिलाए अंतर कश्मीर की आज फिर याद दिलाए शाही अपने बात है मेरे अपने जंग ऊपर बात है जब भी तो हमने थारी हमने उसकी नियत को थारी कर बिताई हमने फांसी का जवाब बार देख जज्बा का हिस्सा वतन के पास है हर जवाब ये सिर्फ कौन नहीं बरस कर रहे दुश्मन के लिए हम तैयार हैं दिल में जज्बा हाथ में तलवार है ये अभी पुकार है अपना हम तैयार
Now I request our esteemed panelist, Ambassador Johar Salim Sahab, General Khalid Rabbani Sahab, Azaz Chaudhry Sahab, please come on the stage and take your seats. Dr. Maria perhaps will be joining us shortly. I invite Madam Imrana Wazir, Executive Director General, Information Systems Academy, to share her welcome remarks, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning to all. At the outset, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to General Zubair Mahmood Hayat, our guest of honor. Thank you, sir. We are honored that you're here. Our distinguished panelists, thank you for your presence. And we look forward to a very knowledgeable discourse today. As we stand at the threshold of new chapter, wrapping up a significant year 2025, where Pakistan successfully countered Indian aggression in May, we at the Information Service Academy welcome you all. As we gather today, I recall moments of pride while visiting China and Turkey few years back. I observed the respect for Pakistan was palpable. I thought it's the mutual history that we share, maybe. Now, after the events in May, there's no doubt that we are a great nation with immense potential. The purpose of this dialogue series is it's going to be a series of different dialogues. So it's to discuss, discern, and chart our way forward, confronting emerging challenges head-on. Dialogues are a prologue to strategies combating propaganda, disinformation, and threats to our stability. Today's dialogue on Indian aggression and Pakistan's strategic response is timely and significant. South Asia's tensions demand attention. We will assess the evolving conflict and Pakistan's response to complex security challenges, our border skirmishes, cyber ops, info warfare. Pakistan seeks peace, not conflict. Yet restraint isn't weakness. We have credible deterrence, professional forces, and resolve to counter aggression in any form. We balance strength with prudence, vital in this nuclearized region. With some of the best brains here, let's explore how we blend strength, restraint, and responsibility to ensure peace and stability in South Asia and safeguard our dear motherland, Pakistan. As we commence, I believe together we will find solutions, contribute to national effort, and prepare for the unforeseen situation in future. Let's talk, celebrate, and arrive at a meaningful solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam. The great military theorist Karl von Clausewitz once wrote that war is not merely a political act, but a real political instrument, a continuation of political intercourse carried on with other means. This profound thought frames our gathering today, not as an exercise in rhetoric, but as a serious, necessary contemplation of policy, strategy, and national resilience. The theme of today's discourse is both urgent and historical. Indian aggression and Pakistan's strategic response, contemplating future course of action. The subcontinent's history is etched with both the brilliance of shared heritage and the scars of persistent conflicts. To speak of this is to speak of Kargil and Kashmir, of surgical strikes and Balakot, of ceaseless diplomatic maneuvers and the ever-present shadow along the line of control. It is a narrative that demands not just emotion, but analysis, not just reaction, but foresight. To guide us through this complex labyrinth, we are privileged to host a panel of nation's most eminent strategic minds today. But first, it is my distinct honor to call upon soldier statesman whose career embodies the very essence of national service and strategic command. He has stood at the pinnacle of our military establishment, steering the ship of the state through some of its most challenging waters. A leader known for his calm, deliberation, and strategic acumen. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in extending warm welcome to our guest of honor, General Zubair Mahmood Hayat, former Chairman Joint Chief of Staff. Sir, welcome to the stage.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, and a very good morning. Let me start by saying that history rarely announces itself politely. It often arrives uninvited, it tests assumptions, humiliates certainties, and forces nations to confront realities they would rather avoid. South Asia today stands precisely at such a moment. What we are witnessing is not merely another episodic crisis between two rival states. It is the collapse of a carefully cultivated illusion, the failure of an attempted new normal, and the emergence of a recalibrated strategic equation that India neither anticipated nor has accepted. India attempted once again to impose a new normal on Pakistan. Once again, it failed. This failure is not tactical, it is structural. It spans the strategic, political, military, and diplomatic domains. It reveals a deeper malaise in India's strategic thinking, a confusion between ambition and capability, between rhetoric and reality, and between ideological intoxication and statecraft. Pakistan's response, measured yet resolute, redrafted the military equation. It demonstrated that escalation dominance does not lie where India assumed it to be. It imposed costs, disrupted timelines, and therefore punctured myths. India, in my humble opinion, took a massive hit, not only in material terms, but in its credibility, confidence, and coherence. This is the point from which we must contemplate the future. At the heart of this crisis, as I said, lies India's obsession with imposing a new normal. This idea rests on a flawed premise that repeated coercive actions, calibrated violence, and political signaling can gradually desensitize Pakistan, the region, and the international system. The Indian belief was that each transgression would lower the threshold, normalize aggression, and redefine deterrence in India's favor. That assumption has collapsed because deterrence is not erased by repetition. It is reinforced by resolve, capability, and clarity. And Pakistan demonstrated all three. India therefore misread Pakistan's strategic culture. It assumed fatigue where there was vigilance. It assumed paralysis where there was preparation. It assumed division where there was a unity of purpose at the depth. Most critically, it assumed that Pakistan would internalize restraint as a weakness. Instead, Pakistan's transformed restraint into strength and response into redefinition. In strategic terms, India assumed escalation control, assumed. It believed it could choose the time, place, and intensity of conflict while denying Pakistan the right to respond symmetrically or credibly. That assumption proved erroneous. In military terms, India overestimated the effectiveness of its acquisitions and underestimated the adaptability of Pakistan's force posture. Platforms, including Rafale, do not win war. Doctrines do. Numbers do not guarantee dominance. Integration does. Noise does not equal power. Coherence does. In political terms, India assumed that nationalism would substitute strategy. That domestic applause of the Godi media could compensate for external backlash. That hyperbole could mask failure. Instead, the political theater collided with strategic consequences. In diplomatic terms, India assumed indulgence. It believed that its sides could excuse its behavior, its market would mute criticism, and its alignment narrative would guarantee a cover. Yet when the crisis sharpened, diplomatic capital proved finite, conditional, and transactional. Pakistan's response was not impulsive. It was anchored in a deterrence logic, proportionality, and strategic communication. It sent a clear message that escalation will not be one-sided. Thresholds are not imaginary, and strategic stability cannot be violated without consequence. This response therefore redrafted the military equation. It restored balance where imbalance was presumed. It reminded observers that power is rational, but it is not absolute. It reasserted that deterrence in South Asia remains mutual, reciprocal, and unforgiving of miscalculations. The future course of action, therefore, does not primarily depend on Pakistan. It depends on India's willingness to accept this new reality. Acceptance would require abandoning delusional dreams. It would mean recognizing that coercion cannot replace dialogue, that dominance cannot be declared into existence, and that ideological certainty is no substitute for strategic prudence. It would require India to abandon Operation Sindoor. I repeat, going forward, it would require India to abandon Operation Sindoor and change track toward diplomacy, realism, and restraint. Unfortunately, there are hardly any signs of that. India's political rhetoric is hardening. Its military acquisitions are accelerating. Its military posture is becoming more rigid, more forward, and more risk accepting. The language of inevitability has replaced the language of responsibility in India. The temptation to double down has replaced the wisdom to pause. This is not strength. This is a momentum without direction. And therefore, I am of the firm belief that India today is on a suicidal path. Not because war is inevitable, but because the hubris is cumulative. Every strategic miscalculation narrows the margin for correction. Every rhetorical escalation reduces the room for compromise. Every ideological assertion by RSS and Hindutva hardens into policy, and every policy hardens into posture. India has strategically, therefore, diminished itself. It has lost its neighborhood. From Nepal to Sri Lanka, from Bangladesh to Maldives, trust has eroded and influence has become transactional, and the goodwill has been replaced by genuine suspicion. Regional leadership, ladies and gentlemen, cannot be commanded. It must be earned. India's heavy-handedness has alienated precisely those that it sought to dominate. Its romance with the United States is under stress. Strategic convergence exists, but it is conditional. Washington interests are global, flexible, and interest-driven. They are not sentimental. They do not guarantee unconditional backing, especially when actions threaten regional stability or risk uncontrollable escalation. India's China policy is in a deadlock. Confrontation without capacity, signaling without leverages, and rigidity without resolution has produced a stalemate that drains India's resources and attention. Beijing is patient. It counts decades, not new cycles. India's old Russian love has delivered little beyond threshold. Moscow's priorities have shifted. Its bandwidth has been constrained. Its ability to underwrite India's strategic ambitions is limited by its own entanglements. In trying to be everything to everyone, India has become strategically lonely. South Asia's future therefore hangs in a balance, because this is not merely a bilateral rivalry. In a nuclearized region with fragile crisis management mechanisms, compressed decision-making timelines, and ideological currents that rewards escalation over compromise, the Hindutva mindset has consumed a great deal of strategic space. It has blurred the line between the nation and the ideology, between the state interest and perceived civilizational grievances. It has transformed selective historical memory into a political weaponry and identity into politics. Ideology, when it captures the state, as it has done in India or Bharat, reduces flexibility. It punishes moderation. It delegitimizes dissent. It equates compromise with betrayal. In such an environment, even rational actors become prisoners of their own rhetoric. Changing course will therefore require fresh thinking and maybe fresh leadership. It will require a generation that understands that power is gained by restraint, that leadership is measured by responsibility, and that security is indivisible in a shared region. You cannot have your own security at the expense of the others. But Pakistan cannot wait for India's introspection. Pakistan's responsibility, in my humble opinion, is twofold. First, Pakistan should continue to strive to be a net stability provider as opposed to India's security provision. This means upholding deterrent stability, preventing crisis from spiraling uncontrollably, engaging diplomatically wherever space exists, and signaling clarity rather than ambiguity. It also means strengthening economic resilience within, political cohesion within, and institutional credibility, because national security is ultimately rooted in its internal national strength. Secondly, Pakistan must prepare for the worst. Preparation, ladies and gentlemen, is not provocation. Readiness is not belligerence. History teaches us that wars are rarely started by those who prepare responsibly. In fact, they are started by those who believe that the other side is unprepared. Pakistan must continue investing in credible deterrence. I can't emphasize more on this. Must continue investing in credible deterrence. Integrate defenses, information resilience, and strategic communication. It must anticipate the hybrid threats, narrative warfare, and coercive diplomacy. It must plan not only for the conflict, but also for the crisis endurance. Above all, Pakistan must remain intellectually honest. Strategically patient must not become strategic complacency. Moral high ground must not become a strategic vulnerability. Hope must not replace planning. The tragedy of South Asia is not that it is condemned to rivalry. It is hosted to the fact of an imagination deficit at the end of India. India lacks the courage to imagine coexistence as strength, restraint as power, and diplomacy as strategy. Yet realism demands that until India accepts this new reality, until it abandons the coercive fantasies, until it recognizes that security cannot be built on another's insecurity, Pakistan must remain vigilant. Peace is always preferable. Stability is always superior. But peace without deterrence is an illusion. And stability without preparedness is surrender. The moment we are living through is not the end of history. It is a fork in the road. One path leads to escalation, isolation, and strategic exhaustion. The other leads to restraint, realism, and recalibration. Pakistan has demonstrated that it will not accept a new normal imposed through aggression. It has demonstrated that deterrence holds. It has demonstrated that the strategic equation can be redrafted. The responsibility now lies across the shoulder, the border. History will judge not who shouted louder, as the Godi media does, but who thought deeper, not who escalated faster, but who preserved stability, not who dreamed grandly, but who acted wisely. Until wisdom prevails on the other side, Pakistan must remain steady, prepared, and resolute. This is not a choice. This is a necessity. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, General Saab, for your time to ISA and IRS. So I request Magna Branawasi to present the souvenir to General Zubair Memorial Saab because he is busy, and we still thankful to him that he spared time out of his schedule today. Thank you, General Sir, for the foundational and commanding overview. You have set the stage by reminding us that our response must be rooted in strength, dignity, and unwavering commitment to sovereignty. Your insights from the highest echelons of the command are invaluable. Thank you. To build upon this strategic foundation, we now turn to diplomatic front. For every action on the battlefield, there is a parallel narrative in the chancelleries of the world. Our next speaker is a custodian of Pakistan's story on the global stage. A career diplomat who has served as Foreign Secretary, now is heading the Institute of Regional Studies with scholarly grace. Now, it's my pleasure to invite Ambassador George Lee, President, Institute of Regional Studies, to please come on the stage and share your perspective. Sir.
I'm comfortable with my height, I guess. Good morning, Assalamu alaikum. General Zubair had just left after a very insightful speech. Ambassador Chaudhry Sahab, General Khalid Rubani Sahab, Dr. Mario Sultan, Ms. Imrana, distinguished audience. I'll start with a quote by the great Roman sage Virgil, who said, and it's very widely quoted, but normally the first half of the quote, "Fortune favors the bold, but she remembers the prudent." We gather today at a moment when South Asia's strategic landscape is being reshaped gradually. And rather abruptly, through coercive doctrines, disruptive technologies, resurgent extremism, and shifting great power alignment. It is in such moments when the margin for error narrows that prudence becomes a strategic virtue. I start by expressing my profound appreciation for the excellent teamwork between the Institute of Regional Studies and the Information Service Academy, which has made possible convening this very important dialogue and brought together a very eminent panel. I'll start in terms of the content of my talk by the takeaways from the May 2025 crisis, conflict, and war. Because before we could turn to the way forward, it's essential to distill the lessons from this conflict that will define South Asia's trajectory for years to come. First, Jammu and Kashmir dispute remains the region's central tinderbox. Without addressing its political, humanitarian, and legal dimensions, the region will remain vulnerable to future crises. Second, India's transition from a calibrated status quo posture to a more assertive escalation-seeking doctrine manifest in Operation Sindoor, and what a misnomer it is, has fundamentally altered deterrence dynamics. While Pakistan's response, grounded in restraint and resolve, preserved regional stability, but left no doubt regarding national sovereignty. Number 3, India's assertion that it has created a new normal, to which General Zubair Hayat referred to as well, warrants careful scrutiny. Its suspension of the Indus Waters Treaty and attempts at economic coercion signal a willingness to test Pakistan's thresholds in future crises. Fourth, future conflicts are likely to be short, high intensity, and geographically expansive. The recent conflict showed that urban centers, cyberspace, and outer space are now part of the battle space. Number 5 is, ladies and gentlemen, the rise of Hindutva-driven extremism, which I believe represents a structural challenge. It is reshaping Indian political behavior, eroding space for moderation, and amplifying crisis instability in terms of its foreign policy. Sixth, great power competition is now deeply woven into South Asia's future. China's growing and positive political and strategic presence, Russia's realignment, and the United States' recalibrated engagement under President Trump have all created new dynamics. Finally, Pakistan's deterrent posture held firm. In fact, the Pakistan's public resolve appeared strengthened, not wavered. Yet this success highlights the need to reinforce full spectrum deterrence, particularly at the lower end of the conflict spectrum. Because the way that we saw the ladder of escalation climbing in the last conflict, it underlines the need that at the lowest rung of the ladder, we have a deterrent spectrum which prevents the ladder climbing any further. I will now turn to strategic opportunities and responsibilities. The aftermath of the conflict presents Pakistan with a rare window of strategic and narrative opportunity. But opportunities must be met with intellectual coherence and policy discipline. We all know that New Delhi has invested heavily in demonizing Pakistan. And it has done so across global platforms. We must now respond with clarity and consistency, anchoring our narrative not in episodic events, but rather in enduring principles of sovereignty, legality, and responsible statecraft. On the domestic front, dear friends, we must strengthen internal stability. The surge in terrorism, particularly in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan, bears unmistakable signs of external sponsorship. This demands improved intelligence coordination, recalibrated force deployment, and of course, renewed investments in local governance wherever gaps exist. That also brings to fore the other dimension of the challenge we are facing from Afghanistan. Now, that challenge has been an enduring challenge for the last 4 decades. And unfortunately, there is no silver bullet. It has to be managed, and it has to be managed using the full array of resources or strengths that we have, our kinetic capability, our economic ability vis-a-vis Afghanistan in terms of trade, in terms of transit trade, and our diplomatic prowess in terms of bilateral diplomacy, but also in terms of regional diplomacy, as well as international diplomacy, which includes the UN and other multilateral organizational diplomacy. China's role, a very positive one, as I've mentioned before, as a military, economic, and diplomatic actor, was also dramatically reshaped and has in turn dramatically reshaped the strategic map. Its entry into South Asian crisis diplomacy has widened Pakistan's strategic space in ways that New Delhi can neither ignore nor easily reverse. Yet, national security today extends far beyond the battlefield. Economic resilience, good governance, institutional credibility, and social cohesion are central pillars for Pakistan's long-term stability now. So what would be my policy recommendations, ladies and gentlemen? Allow me to present a structured set of recommendations across key domains. Number one, India policy and dialogue. I believe Pakistan should avoid launching fresh peace initiatives because that Indians see as a sign of weakness until underlying structural impediments are addressed, of course. Yet, Pakistan must keep the channels open. Strategic patience must not become strategic silence. Our engagement, any engagement that we have in India, should not be BJP centric. India's policy is diverse, and future openings may emerge beyond the Hindutva ecosystem. We have to keep that in mind. We must also raise the reputational and diplomatic cost of India's refusal to engage. 2025 has been a great year for Pakistan's diplomatic profile. We must sustain it and use it to demonstrate to the world India's intransigence for a dialogue for peaceful resolution of conflict. And should dialogue be resumed, it must be unconditional and should include confidence-building measures. We must emphasize upon a strict adherence to the Indus Waters Treaty. We must also underline a faithful implementation of the LOC ceasefire. Perhaps there could be a restraint in the official rhetoric, but that would be incumbent upon what happens across the border. My second point, ladies and gentlemen, is that it's very important to understand India's strategic shift. We must deepen analysis of India's ideological transformation and risk-accepted strategic culture. This understanding must inform Pakistan's diplomacy, military posture, and narrative strategy. My third point would be in terms of security, deterrence, and internal stability. Our intelligence capacity, which is of a superior quality, needs to be further enhanced and improved. Because any leakage of intelligence to terrorist networks can strengthen their nefarious designs. Pakistan must ensure that no state, rather non-state actor, can undermine diplomacy or national security. Future warfare will be multi-domain. Pakistan must modernize doctrine, strengthen joint command structures, and integrate emerging technologies. What we demonstrated in this conflict, the May conflict, befitting response was there for the world to see. But we cannot, ladies and gentlemen, rest on our laurels. It's a dynamic equation. We need to adopt emerging technologies as they become available. The constitutional integration of Kyrgyzstan merits serious consideration, not only for its people's rights, but also for its implication for the Jammu and Kashmir dispute. My fourth point is about the regional strategy beyond India. Within South Asia, we should advance a South Asia with or without India regional approach, strengthening ties with Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, other countries in the region, but also beyond, with Iran, and it's been happening. And Central Asia, we've seen very vibrant diplomacy in 2025. I think it's a step in the right direction and needs to be sustained. The strategic space created by Operation Banyan or Marsus should be used to expand energy corridors, trade routes, and economic partnerships. This is a good time for Pakistan-US relations. After many years, US has looked at Pakistan not from an AFPAC perspective, not from an Indo-centric perspective, but from the perspective of what Pakistan has to offer as a net security provider, but also in terms of trade and investment opportunities. Now, these linkages need to be built. We need to translate what we have achieved in the domain of foreign policy into economic outcomes. Regional economic integration, especially in the sectors of textile, agriculture, pharmaceuticals, energy, should be a priority. My fifth point, dear friends, is great power balancing. United States and China. Now, many analysts abroad and perhaps domestically have been saying that this would perhaps be one of the greatest challenges for Pakistan's foreign policy in the coming years. I think it's a matter of some satisfaction that this year, when there was a reset in Pakistan-US relations, and I'm using this word because it has been used by some very reputed journals internationally, was not in any way at the cost of our relations with China. And this is essential. Pakistan must both engage with Washington and Beijing, but avoid the illusion of equal balancing. The nature of our relations with the United States and China are different. They're both great friends, but China is an all-weather strategic partner with which we have vital stakes in sustaining the exemplary level of relations that have taken decades and decades to build. It remains Pakistan's most consistent long-term partner. And we have to make sure that there is no mixed strategic signaling. Engagement with the United States, of course, it's very important. It's one of our largest trading partners. In fact, we get our biggest trade surplus from the US. We get billions of dollars of remittances there. We have over 1 million strong diaspora there. We have been partnered with the US in so many phases of our relations in the past. We're still partnering US in enhancing stability and security beyond this region. But historical precedents have shown us that our approach cannot be tactical. It has to be strategic. We have to build enduring commitments. And we must, of course, ensure, like I said, that our ties with Washington do not generate any misperceptions in Beijing. My next point is about multilateralism and legal preparedness. We must spotlight humanitarian and legal concerns over what India is doing in the illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and highlight its destabilizing activities in Balochistan and elsewhere, of course. Legal preparedness on the Indus Waters Treaty and Gilgit-Baltistan must be strengthened through comprehensive documentation. We should explore a regional mechanism for states affected by exclusionary ideologies such as Hindutva. Our Middle Eastern partners, and we have some great friends there with who we have fraternal ties. The SMDA that was signed between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, it's a testament to the bonds of friendship and to the trust that we enjoy with our friends such as Saudi Arabia, UAE, and many other countries there. Now that has served Pakistan well. 60% our remittances come from there, 60% of our diaspora is there. We have some of our biggest trades with countries such as UAE, Saudi Arabia. The defense cooperation that we have with those countries is ideal and long-standing, of course. But they can also serve as constructive intermediaries in calibrated engagement with India. We have an instance in the past. And if there are possibilities in the future, I think we can't look away from that. My next point is about the narrative and image building. And that would not be complete without internal reform. In the world that we live today is a world of brands, and that includes country brands. We have to build our country brand. We have got a great window of opportunity. This year has allowed the world to look at Pakistan more holistically. We need to seize the moment. We have to build our image as a country which is a factor of stability and security and peace, and a country with great economic opportunity. And for that, we'll have to transition from an event-driven to a strategic, issue-based national narrative. No narrative, ladies and gentlemen, can be built on a domestic situation which is calling for reforms. So we have to focus on that as well, whether those are governance reforms, structural economic reforms, and reforms in terms of human development. We also must rebuild confidence among smaller SAARC states. Jiva and Islam. Okay. सलाम का जवाब तो देना पड़ता है बड़ा। Pakistan, we have to present ourselves as a responsible, and we have done that. Our actions call louder than our words, but it has to be sustained. We have to be seen as a dependable partner. My last point, ladies and gentlemen, is that domestically, our decision-making must be firmly anchored in Islamabad, guided by national interest and not any external pressures. Policy consistency towards India is critical. Oscillation between contemplation and conciliation undermines clarity sometimes. So in foreign policy, our narrative, our statement should only emerge from Islamabad. In conclusion, dear friends, I would like to underline that we stand at an important crossroad. The aftermath of the conflict has strengthened our confidence, clarified our strategic priorities, but also exposed any vulnerabilities that must be addressed. Virgil, whom I quoted at the inception of my speech, reminds us that history rewards both courage and prudence. Pakistan has demonstrated courage. Courage in defending our sovereignty, courage in defending our territorial integrity, and courage in defending our narrative. But we must now also demonstrate prudence in shaping our future. Let us proceed with foresight, discipline, and an unwavering commitment to regional peace with dignity. I thank you all.
Thank you, Ambassador Salim, for the eloquent exposition on the diplomatic chessboard and the critical role of narrative shaping. You have eliminated the pathways of statecraft that complement the tools of state security. Now we shift our gaze from the global stage back onto the tactical and operational contours of our defense. We are honored to have with us a commander who has walked the most challenging terrain, both literally and metaphorically. A former corps commander who has led the troops in the field, understands the soldier's heart and a general's mind. I invite General Khalid Ravani to please come on the stage and share your perspective.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ambassador Johar Salim, President IRS, Madam Imrana Wazir, Executive Director, ISA, if I'm pronouncing it right, ISA, fellow panelists, my Ustad Muhtaram, General Naeem Khalid Lodi, General Ijaz Awan, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure and definitely an honor sharing this stage with such panelists, all very eminent and all people of opinion. What I want to do is that instead of going into other details which have already been covered, I'm skipping them. This is one. And the second is I will straight away go and in just a couple of minutes let you know as to what I think about what all is going to be the future of Pakistan, India, this regional conflict. Now, we have seen a number of aggressions in the past, and in very near past also, we went through the testing times. But every time when India tested us, the results were clear. We never shied off. We did what was required. Our response was calibrated, but definitely which left the other side with the bleeding nose. Now, with all these befitting response, what has happened to India? They've rushed to the international market. They've increased their defense budget. Now they are on a shopping spree to bolster their already huge military entourage. They are trying to get the latest. Some of it already is in their possession. Rushing to Russia, France, US, and some other countries. Of course, Israel included. Now let's have a look at the genesis of Modi's India. Now Modi government dwells on Hindustan, a greater India, Akhand Bharat. They want a dominant role in this area. Well, of course, it's a huge country, many times greater than other countries around it. But as already said, that if you want to become great, you have to earn it. You cannot force it through your own coercive action. Modi government is thriving on anti-Pakistan tirade. Anything and everything politically occurring in that country finally finds a reason for aggression against Pakistan, in which they would be able to take their people along and maybe certain extra votes in the ballot box. Now, should we expect such things even in future? So it's a big yes. Yes, it will be. This was neither the first time nor the last time in May 25 that it occurred. But what all we did at that time, that euphoria should now stop and we should be thinking forward as to what has to be done in the future, because they are upgrading their system. And next time, whenever they come, today, tomorrow, or day after, they will come with more intensity, with more accuracy, and with more lethality. And that is the thing which should bother our policymakers and our military commanders as to what developmental strategy they have to follow, which we are very sure they are already following it. We cannot lower our guards. Such a big country like India, which at least poses to be a regional power, their ego has been severely damaged. And they ought to come again just to avenge, just to ensure, just to tell their people, and just to tell the world that they are dominant and they can do something. There can be more false flag operations. Even Pahalgam was one, which was, I think, the world recognizes it, that the responsibility did not lie on Pakistan. It happened. Was it a false flag operation of people from within India doing it? It is for India to decide. But such events are likely to take place in future also, because India thinks that under the nuclear overhang there is a space available for a limited war, a skirmish, a strike, or an aggression. As already said, I think nothing can be more flawed. Their thinking definitely is flawed, because once you get into even the limited actions against another country, with both of them nuclear, well, only time will tell that how it will spiral out of control, and then the results are going to be catastrophic. And one thing more should be very, very clear. Nobody ever should test our resolve. We have the resolve, nobody should doubt it, and we have the capability to show that resolve to the world, that if at that time comes, we can go to any limit for that matter. Till now, our policy has been that if you strike, we'll strike a notch above you. And this is what has happening in the last so many incidents which have occurred between India and Pakistan. Even in the last one, they came in first. They then asked for a ceasefire after seeing our resolve and after getting their own military hardware damaged. Now what we need to do is that the capability which we have, it needs to be honed on, further improved. Be ready for the next round, which will be bloodier. They have seen their weaknesses, why they may not say it publicly, but the military minds on the other side, they have seen what weaknesses they have, and they are likely to now get over those weaknesses as soon as possible. We should see our as to what all is left, which we should have been doing or which should be done. And this time of peace, a relative peace, I must say, should be used in improving our stature in a manner that whenever that time comes, we should again prove to the nation and to the world that we will stand by it. The lethal missile technology and acquisition of targets on either side is very accurate. With so many platforms available, nothing is hidden, neither from us nor from them. Now, this is a very dangerous situation. The dangerous situation, we being a smaller country, should we wait that our all assets or bulk of the assets should be degraded and then decide to do something? Now, this is going to be a very difficult call, but people at the helm of affairs have to take it. That what is going to be that threshold on which then we will say, but both ho gayi, and then we come in with our response, which will of course not be a very simple one and not a conventional one. At the same time, our conventional warheads should be so much accurate, which are, and if there is a need, should be further improved, that we should be able to take their military hardware as much, at least, as they want to take ours, so that the reality dawns on them also, that if we are taking some sort of punishment from them, you will be given even a higher and more befitting punishment. Now, with that, lot has been said on the diplomatic maneuver. Militaries do not fight war alone. It's not possible that an army alone or a military alone will fight a war. The diplomatic arm is actually an an arm on which a lot of things depend. We should never be isolated in the region or in the world. This year of 2025 has gone very well. It should be taken ahead in the same stride. But we should never fall short of options with our diplomatic prongs. And then last thing, but of course not the least, wars are not fought by armies. Wars are fought by nations. And when the nations are going to be behind an army, the army will perform. That is very important. And I think it is time for those who really want to have a look on this problem. I have said this thing earlier also in one such forum in IRS, and I'm again saying this thing now. Till the time our nation is not gelled with us, with the army, the results may not be optimal. And we might as well fall short of what is required. Steps should be taken right now to gel the nation into one whole so that whenever the time comes, whenever the chips are down, the response is such that the enemy should know. An enemy should not be playing with our inner fissures which they have created or some which we have created for ourselves. We have to be bothered about our western border, about our eastern border, and we really do not want our enemies all over. We have to win over the rest of the neighbors instead of pushing them towards the stature of an enemy. Because no country alone, surrounded by so many more, would be able to stand and fight a war. That also, when at times there is a doubt about the nation also, this is the exact reason why India, or any enemy for that matter, would like to exploit it. And we should ensure that this exploitation does not take place. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the patience.
Thank you, General Rabani. Your ground level perspective from the trenches to the command post adds an indispensable layer of realism to our discussion today. You have reminded us of the human and operational dimensions of deterrence. Staying within the realm of high stakes diplomacy, our next speaker brings a unique blend of experience from both Islamabad and Washington, D.C. As a former foreign secretary and ambassador to the United States, he has navigated the most critical of bilateral relationships, understanding the pressures and possibilities it entails. Please welcome Ambassador Azad Ahmed Chaudhry. He is the chairman of the Stuff Institute and a former foreign secretary. Sir, welcome to the stage. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Director General Imran Wazir and Ambassador Johar for jointly hosting this session on Indian aggression and Pakistan's strategic response. Much has already been said and heard. I'll pose 3 questions to myself and try to answer them. What have India and Pakistan achieved from the May 2025 conflict? Bharat ne kya khoya, humne kya paya? That's the first question. The second, will India indulge in another round of aggression this year? Because India has only paused the Sindoor operation and not ended it. And third, what must Pakistan do, the short, medium, and long-term measures to ensure its national security? Now to the first question, I believe India has discovered to its own rudeness that it could not display the kind of military might it thought or assumed that it had. It also discovered to its horror that it is not a counterbalance to China, something that the West had wished it to do. It also discovered to its disappointment that its narrative that Pakistan is the epicenter of terrorism is no longer acceptable in the world, which was the justification it had used. Pakistan, for its part, discovered that it does have the might to fight a neighbor much larger in size and resources. Pakistan also found its esteem worldwide going up after the confrontation. And the event as a whole has instilled great self-esteem and national pride in the people of Pakistan. For the second question, will India indulge in another round of aggression against Pakistan this year or in the near future? My assessment is that India will not indulge in any further aggression, at least in the near future, for three reasons. One, India needs time to prepare itself to fill the gaps that it may have found in the May 2025 confrontation and integrate the various platforms that it has acquired from Russia, United States, France, and other sources. Secondly, there is a deep perception within Indian analysts that India was fighting a two-front war, that Pakistan and China were together in this war and could be together in the future wars. This, of course, may not be wholly correct because Pakistan fought this war on its own, though it used Chinese technology with much induction and improvements by our own people. Thirdly, the international environment is no longer conducive for accepting India's justifications for war, which is terrorism, cross-border terrorism. I think the world has discovered with Pahalgam incident, as you rightly mentioned, that it could be a false flag, it could be internal factors. But Pakistan had nothing to do with it. And the reports that the United Nations reporters have prepared attest to that, as does the US administration's report to the US Congress. Now, for the third question on which Ambassador Johar Salim has dilated upon in great detail, what is it that Pakistan must do in the short, medium, and long term? I believe that in the short term, Pakistan must not be complacent. I think General Zubair was right when he mentioned that we must remain fully prepared and expect the worst. Secondly, with regard to the recent reset with the US or bonhomie with the US, while we all are aware that our relations with the United States have always been transactional, this reset is not likely to be any different. But while the sun is shining, we should welcome the US investments in critical sectors of oil and gas and minerals, because any stakes that the US builds in Pakistan will enhance Pakistan's stability. And the same goes for all other investors wishing to invest in Pakistan. As for China, we all know that it is a steady friend, that has never interfered in Pakistan's internal affairs, has always defended Pakistan on international forums. And to be honest, Pakistan has also respected China's core interests, always. So that relationship will continue as it was, and the recent decision by the Chinese leadership to embark on CPEC 2.0 is a reflection of the trust that it continues to enjoy in its partnership with Pakistan. On the point that Ambassador Johar raised on balancing the relations, I normally like to refrain from using the word balance because it smacks of equality. Whereas these two relationships, important as they are not equal relationships. But I believe that Pakistan can and must maintain relations with both countries, United States and China. I am not one of those who believe that we should not sail in two boats and pick one boat or the other. I believe in times such as these, when cooperation and confrontation coexist, and cooperation is mostly issue-based. So you can be a partner of the United States on one issue, and you can be its rival on another. And that goes for nearly every relationship. So in such times, I think Pakistan is entitled and competent to maintain relations with both these countries. Another short-term hotspot is our relations with Afghanistan, which, as we all are aware, and nobody knows it better than General Khalid Rabbani, who spent 4 years as Corps Commander in Peshawar, that we cannot take it lightly. One, because the Taliban have shown their own true colors, but also because India is creating a second front against Pakistan through Afghanistan, as it has done earlier too. And Indians hated the Taliban regime, but the only reason they have embraced them now is because they both are against Pakistan. How do we handle that? That's for another day. I think I will not like to go into detail about the multi-pronged approach that Pakistan has followed, but I'm very happy that from the high-pitched rhetoric, we have come down to quiet diplomacy, and I think that's a better course of action for dealing with Afghanistan. As for other South Asian countries, India is deeply disappointed with what has happened in Bangladesh. And China, Pakistan, Bangladesh triangle has really upset India. But come to think of it, India itself is to blame because it could not carry its region along. Hence, there is space for other powers, particularly China, to come in. And with the Gulf countries, you have rightly mentioned already that this is another opportunity. There is a reason why Saudi Arabia felt it optimal for itself to partner with Pakistan through that strategic mutual defense agreement. The question has often been raised, will Saudi Arabia stand shoulder to shoulder with Pakistan if India commits another round of aggression? My own understanding of that agreement is that it is essentially in peacetime, where there's space for considerable activities in the defense domain, and in a sense, it has added another layer of deterrence for Pakistan against possible Indian aggression. In the short to medium term, a subject that straddles both is economic priority. We must economic security. We must prioritize our economic security because unless you have the sound economics with you, it might become difficult to maintain this trajectory of victory. For that, a lot must happen in the short term itself. I think continuity of economic policies is an imperative. We have learned from the history of both Pakistan and India since 1990 that in one country there was a continuity of economic policies and the other there was not, it was not, and therefore we suffered. And therefore, that is extremely important. Some kind of charter of economy is imperative. We also need to ease the doing of business in Pakistan. The unease of doing business has frustrated investors, not only foreign, but also domestic. And for that, somehow we need to find ways to undo the bureaucratic red tape and wrangling. There are plenty of reports out there. We don't need another commission or a committee or a report. We just need to implement them. Same in the staying in the medium term, I think we need to work on local governance. On the governance itself, but more so on local governance, something that my institute, Sonoma Institute, is deeply attached to. We believe that unless you devolve resources to grassroots level and the power to use those resources to grassroots levels at districts and tehsils, the citizens of Pakistan will not be empowered. And if the citizens of Pakistan are not empowered, then Pakistan will not gain this kind of stature that it aspires to. Going on to long-term security, I think human security should be a high priority for us. With millions of children out of school, it can be very easily guessed that they can become cannon fodder in the hands of the militants. We must focus on human security, but alongside that, redefine the national purpose in terms of citizen-centric empowerment. That's why I have personally been a great fan of the national security policy that was announced some 3 years ago, January 2022, which rested the national security paradigm on the tripod, on the pods of traditional defense, economic security, and human security. I believe it is time to revisit that because that is the only way that Pakistan can ensure its national security. I cannot agree more with General Ravani, who said it all, that unless the nation stands with the armed forces cannot perform the manner in which they have performed in May 2025. So thank you so much. Allah bless you all. Allah bless our country, Pakistan. Thank you, Ambassador Chaudhary, for the clear-eyed assessment of the international environment and pragmatic options available to Pakistan. Your analysis of great power dynamic is crucial indeed. Finally, we turn to a dimension that defines the 21st century battlefield, the intersection of technology, strategy, and non-traditional security. Our final panelist is a pioneering scholar who has dedicated her work to understanding the profound implications of nuclear doctrine, space, and cyber domains. As the president of Sarsi University, she leads a vital institution shaping the future strategic thinkers. Dr. Mari Sultan, president of Sarsi University, please welcome to the stage and share your thoughts. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. It's a matter of great privilege and, of course, honor to be speaking on this podium. And I would also like to echo a deep gratitude to Ma'am Imrana and also Ambassador Jafar and our distinguished colleagues who have spoken before me. I think it's always difficult to speak after General Raghani and Ambassador Azad. But nonetheless, I will today talk about something which is much closer to the topic, and that is understanding Bani al versus in terms of what happened. Considering the fact that this was a multi-dimensional war, I will essentially focus on the kill chain methodology which was used by the Pakistani Air Force in the initial phase of the war. We all know that this has changed the world. We all understand that it has repositioned Pakistan as a very strong military power. But very rarely have we understood what actually happened. So in the next 10 to 15 minutes, I will aim to demystify what has happened during Operational Bayan al-Marsus, and most importantly, why it is considered as a pivotal movement and a pivotal moment in modern military history. In modern military history, it is believed that tactics and sometimes maneuvers change the outcome of war, not just technology itself. Such in 1945, it is believed that blitzkrieg essentially changed the way wars were fought. Likewise, what has happened in Banyan al-Marsus has changed the way future military modern warfare in the air domain will be fought. So what has actually happened? Number one, the first has been that there has been a paradigm shift in how air power can be systematically employed to achieve decisive strategic objectives. That means a single domain deterrence operation which can offset and also change the outcome of war. Number two, there was also the use of a sophisticated kill chain methodology, which enabled Pakistani forces to achieve unprecedented tactical success, which converted into strategic outcome. Now, how was it done? It was done through coordinated intelligence, surveillance, and precision strike capabilities. This also meant that the traditional air warfare doctrine could be revolutionized through integration of advanced sensor networks, real-time data fusion, and adaptive targeting procedures by establishing a seamless connection between target identification and engagement. So essentially what has happened is that for the first time, Pakistan Air Force and Pakistani Armed Forces managed to create a seamless connectivity between sensor to shooter phase. So this means that entire phase, which would have earlier gone into days, maybe even months, for the first time, we saw its execution being done in minutes, 15 minutes to be precise. Pakistan created a new template for modern air operations and hence since then impacted on military planning worldwide. One, first of all, Banyan al-Marsus did happen in May, but it doesn't mean that the understanding of war and the threat of war was not being assessed. Regional tensions and military imperatives ensured that escalating tensions were seen by Pakistani and its ability to demonstrate critical air power projected capabilities was seen simultaneously. So this means the geopolitical landscape demanded a response that would establish clear deterrence while avoiding prolonged conflict. One of the biggest problems which we have today in warfare is to ensure that warfare is not prolonged beyond time. Because if it prolongs beyond time, then the cost of war outweighs the benefits of war. So the question has been how to fight a fast war, a good war, and a war which will convert your problems into success. Pakistan's military leadership recognized that conventional air operations would be insufficient to achieve their strategic objectives. Therefore, the terrain, enemy air defenses, and international scrutiny required an approach that maximized precision guided attacks while minimizing collateral damage and operational exposure. And that is where you heard about the different variations in which each squadron of the Pakistani Air Force was pre-designated and pre-focused in terms of target identification, target engagement, and also continuous drills. It is believed that the intelligence assessments revealed that traditional bombing campaigns would likely result in proactive engagement and a protracted engagement without decisive outcomes. Instead, the Pakistani strategists developed a methodology that prioritized high-value targets while maintaining plausible deniability and limiting international backlash. So what did we do? First, we came up with a strategic assessment. That means a comprehensive evaluation of regional threats and Pakistan's military capabilities. That is meaning that we understood the entire azimuth in terms of what could be a possible regional outreach. That means the possibility of Israelis working in it, the possibilities of other extra-regional partners coming to India's help, and to understand the fact that it may not be a singular war being fought by Pakistan by a singular technology. Number two, We understood that there was a need for doctrinal development, a formation of new operational concepts emphasizing precision and speed. Third, resource allocation. You can't fight a war in the middle of war. You have to prepare for war. The resource allocation was done almost 6 months or even earlier in terms of fighting these operations in the time in which the war was actually fought. And last but not least, to come up with a detailed mission planning incorporating kill chain methodology. So what did we do? One, we converted it into 4 phases. First phase was detection, that is a multi-sensor surveillance networks, which identified potential targets through electromagnetic signatures, visual confirmation, and signals intelligence. Identification. Advanced algorithms and human analysts confirmed target legitimacy and strategic value through pattern recognition and intelligence correlation. Third, tracking. Continuous monitoring, which allowed maintenance of target awareness through multiple sensor modalities and predictive movement analysis. Fourth, engagement. That means precision weapons deployment with real-time guidance, updates, and battle damage assessment capabilities. So it means that you are not taking instant decisions based on one satellite image or 2 satellite images, but you are following your targets, looking at multiple angles, and most importantly, getting intelligence from multiple sources. And this is the brilliance of what was exhibited during the Banial Mahsoos by the Pakistan Air Force and also for Pakistan's engagement policy. So the revolutionary aspect was Pakistan's approach, which lay in simultaneous executions of these. Usually when you have one engagement pattern, it is just done in one order loop. What was amazing about Pakistan's engagement policy or the kill chain methodology was that we simultaneously were doing these multiple kill chain analysis, which were feeding back into the order loop. That means feeding back into your decision making, allowing your engagement process to become almost foolproof. Central to this methodology was also persistent surveillance, maintaining continuous sensor coverage over priority areas while simultaneously preparing strike assets for immediate deployment. So not only were you looking at what target you were going to engage, but you were also looking in terms of what would be your targets to which you will be engaging these targets. So in short, this approach eliminated the traditional gaps between intelligence collection and kinetic action, creating an integrated system where detection automatically initiated the engagement sequence. Now, we move forward. So in terms of intelligence collection methods, what were those methods? Pakistan used satellite reconnaissance, providing high-resolution imagery, electronic surveillance, monitoring the enemy communications, human intelligence networks operating in contested areas, and open-source intelligence for commercial imagery and data. It is believed that the pre-operation phase lasted approximately 6 months, during which the Pakistani intelligence services compiled a comprehensive target database encompassing over 200 potential objectives. Now, what could be the priority targets? This also means the choice of targets became extremely important. The brilliance of the operation lies that Pakistan hit India where it hurt them the most, in terms of destruction of S-400, in terms of destruction of Rafales, in terms of destruction of their missile ranges. And that basically means that you also had to do another assessment. And that assessment was that most of them were in urban centers. You did not want to have a high level of collateral damage. So this meant that you looked at priority target categories, that is command and control facilities, air defense installations, communications infrastructure, military logistic hubs. Strategic military value was added to each one of them, operational accessibility, collateral damage assessment, international law compliance as well, and most importantly, a multi-source confirmation and legal review procedures. In short, what we were looking at was a constant procedural overlay in terms of target identification. So we were looking at UAVs, which were used for high-altitude reconnaissance drones, provided persistent surveillance over target areas with multispectral imaging capabilities, ground-based sensors, which allowed for strategic radar installations and electronics, listening posts monitored enemy communications and movement patterns, and manned reconnaissance, that means specialized aircrafts conducted technical reconnaissance missions to confirm target situation and provided a continuous update in terms of offensive and defensive postures of the enemy. And last but not least, the use of space-based assets. That is where most of the information came as unreliably and reliably the most interesting part of this conflict, which was not disrupted. Most of the time, satellite-based information has faced different electromagnetic disruptions, not because they're not made available, but because of the political alignments which our colleagues have talked about. So this is the time in which Pakistan actually focused on relying on space-based assets which were in Pakistan's communication reach during the conflict. Now, please, if you look at it, it was UAV systems which provided around 0.3 millimeters ground sampling coverage, satellite assets which provided around 0.5 millimeters resolution, and ground sensors which allowed for 150 kilometers range of electronic signatures. Please move forward. So in short, we were looking at a four-dimensional process where we were looking at sensor integration, tactical execution, unit-level missions planning and target engagement, operational control, theater-wide coordination and resource allocation, and last but not least, a national-level decision that we will be engaging these targets at will and at time. The most remarkable part of this was that Pakistan maintained communication survivability at 99.7%, which is even higher than the NATO standards. So this basically meant that your operations were not disrupted by enemy operations, enemy electromagnetic pulses, or their counteroffensive, while you were able to disrupt their communications, have access to their battlefield communications, in addition to targets and how they were talking to each other. So in short, red light, which could have technically allowed your missions to port, was replaced with redundant satellite communication links, which ensured continuous connectivity even in contested electromagnetic zones. It is believed that the system processed over 10,000 intelligence reports daily and automatically prioritized information based on operational relevance and time sensitivity. We can say that what Pakistan achieved during Operation Bani al-Marsus showed Pakistan's integration of advanced weapon systems with real-time targeting data, creating an unprecedented level of accuracy and effectiveness and air-delivered ordnance. The operation demonstrated how modern guidance technology could be leveraged to achieve strategic objectives while maintaining minimum collateral damage. We used precision-guided munitions, GPS-guided bombs, and missiles with accuracy within 3 meters of intended targets, laser-guided systems, terminal guidance systems, providing real-time course corrections during weapons flight, allowing engagement of mobile targets and time-sensitive objectives. And last but not least, directed energy weapons and electronic warfare systems capable of disrupting enemy communications and air defense systems without kinetic destruction. This means multiple technologies were used during this operation, and in short, the weapon selection criteria became critical. How you used your platforms, how you engaged them, became the decisive edge in terms of how JF-17 was used, how your impact assessment was done. The most interesting thing is this, which is perhaps unmatched in any other country than NATO, which has been done by a country of the South, and that has been the battle damage assessment capability. Traditionally, battle damage assessment capability, and I'm sure the military commanders will correct me, usually is based on multi-source information. But it is also, in today's time, based on technology. So what was Pakistan's battle damage assessment capability time lag? It is amazing to know that it ranged only between 1 to 15 minutes. So impact assessment, initial weapon impact evaluation through sensor data analysis within 30 seconds of the detonation. That is the first assessment which you got. Second was damage verification, multi-source confirmation of target destruction through imagery and satellite and signals intelligence within 5 minutes. Number 3, mission adaptation. Automatic retargeting algorithms redirected follow-on strikes based on battle damage assessment, resulting within 10 minutes. And number 4, strategic assessment. Comprehensive operational impact evaluation completed within 60 minutes for a strategic decision-making. Do we continue? Do we stop? Have we achieved our objectives or not? So it is unprecedented that you will have a country which fought a superior enemy, bigger enemy, more advanced multiple systems, and you were able to have full battlefield visibility and a damage assessment within the first 15 minutes of the operation. In short, we can say that target destruction, successfully neutralizing 47 or 50 priority targets within the first 72 hours, was the actual acme of Baniyan al-Marsus. And it doesn't mean just the air, it also meant land-based target acquisitions and also some which were based in the intelligence domain. 15 command and control facilities, 12 air defense installations, 20 military logistics centers. Number two, another victory which Baniyan al-Marsus showed, which is also unprecedented in modern warfare, that is force protection. That basically meant zero aircraft losses. Despite operating in heavily defended airspace, demonstrating security of precision strikes. The strikes of the aircrafts in the hangars do not count in the same sense because these are not considered as operational casualties. They may be considered as logistics or must have some other elements. So complete mission completion and no pilot casualties. This is another victory which distinguishes Pakistan's military prowess in terms of what happened in Operation Baniyan al-Marsus. And minimal exposure time. You did not expose your pilots, your systems for a protracted long warfare. Yes, everybody can see what Pakistan has. Yes, we had the biggest air battlefield in the world, lasting more than 60 minutes. But what's interesting is that it came around with a minimum exposure time. And last but not least, operational speed. Number one, rapid decision making. Number two, coordinated strikes. Number three, minimum warning time. And most importantly, it was done through a scientific level. So I'm going to conclude in terms of what are the takeaways from Operational Baniyan al-Marsus. What is the future? Why Pakistan seems to be respected suddenly? Why the professional academy of Pakistani Armed Forces, Pakistani Air Force, and Pakistani's decision making has taken a new lease after Operational Baniyan al-Marsus. Number one, it has become a prelude to doctrinal evolution. Military academies right now worldwide are studying the operation as a case study in integrated warfare, fundamentally altering how air warfare and how land warfare is integrated to come with a seamless projection of power in an actual battlefield, which is not fought by one enemy, but by multiple enemies. Number two, it has preceded international standards. NATO and other military alliances have adapted similar kill chain methodologies to their operational planning processes, but it is the first time where a country with less resources was able to execute, perform, and out-deliver all of its strategic military objectives. And number three is, of course, training reevaluation. If you're looking at battlefield and a war which can be fought from 30 seconds to 15 minutes, then it means that your training standards and your training programs also have to be rewritten. And it is iconic that I stand here in the Information Academy, the hallmark of training our future strategists in terms of information operations, which also became critical. I was hard positioned to go for information operations or to talk about this, but then I chose hard for military subject because I thought that might be of some interest. And last but not least, strategic planning. Military planners have now prioritized information security and decision speed over traditional mass-based approaches. So if you're able to have speed and you have information dominance, then you might be able to change the outcome of war despite the fact that you might be numerically less in number. This has been one of the major outcomes of Operation Baniyan al-Marsus. Last but not least, I will conclude on the fact that perhaps most significantly, Operation Baniyan al-Marsus demonstrated that smaller military forces could achieve strategic objectives against larger adversaries through technological security and tactical innovation once positioned with the overall understanding of our strategic objectives during war, pre-war, and post-war. Last but not least, the operation's success in achieving political objectives through limited military action has influenced diplomatic and conflict resolution approaches. demonstrating that precisely applied military pressure can achieve strategic goals without escalatory risk associated with long, prolonged, and protracted campaigns. So, ladies and gentlemen, Operation Banyal Marsus is not a new example, but it is a definitive example where a smaller country has achieved all because it managed to think fresh, adapt technologies, integrate systems, but most importantly, deliver on multiple fronts. That means what we've all called that war is a continuation of politics, and that is what was seen in Banyal Marsus, and we hope that our Indian friends learn something from it. Unfortunately, the saga of Banyal Marsus may not end because our adversaries on the other side continue to believe that mass technological development can outrun a better use of technology, tactics, and most importantly, brilliance on the battlefield. But what we have seen looking at the deeper analysis of the Operation Banyal Marsus is that it is always the strategy, the man behind the gun, and the execution on the battlefield of your weapon systems and your response time and your target engagement processes, which will determine the outcome. So with this, I thank you all for your patience.
Thank you, Dr. Maria, for that forward-looking and technologically informed and deeply insightful presentation. You have expertly outlined the frontiers where the future conflicts may. Open the floor for a question and answer session, and I request you to please be concise and direct with your question to our illustrious panelists. So, floor is open now. The boy raising hand, you can hand the mic to him. Yeah. You can introduce yourself and then the panelists you're asking question to.
So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Myself, Muhammad Abdullah, from the Institute of Regional Studies, and I'm here as a research assistant in the information warfare. So, my question is that India has faced the defeat, but still can't accept it. Thank you.
जहाँ तक मुझे समझ आई आपने ये कहा कि they have been defeated but they haven't accepted their defeat. So this is nothing new. We have seen India not doing that for such a long time in so many different instances. India is known for its strategic hypocrisy in the name of strategic autonomy. It's known for strategic deception. In so many instances of military confrontation, it comes up with stories which seem to be just out of a fairy tale book. Even during this conflict, we witnessed within Indian media segments, they're talking about sort of Lahore has been destroyed or Karachi has been destroyed and sort of, like this city has been captured. This was, but of course the world didn't believe. I'd like to invite Ambassador Izzar to elaborate upon that further.
When a country loses war, its leadership has to relent. And since Mr. Modi did not want to go down as a loser, he made his people believe through his media that India has not lost the war. And that momentum has actually won him the Bihar elections as well. It may take a little while before the reality begins to sink in, and we already see several Indian analysts now exposing what had actually happened. So therefore, this is actually another reason why, in my view, India will not indulge in another aggression, because this time around, the falsehood that was sold to the people of India may not remain that credible. Thank you.
Thank you. General Rabari, would you like to add to that?
While I think there's nothing much to add to it, but as already said that yes, a country like India is not expected to be cowed down in media at least. They are superior media, and the way their superior Bollywood, they would like to pose as if nothing has happened. Rather, they have been able to injure us the maximum. It's common, it is done that way. Not only in India and many more countries also. It's very difficult to say that, okay, I was defeated and I've taken the losses. Very difficult to say. That's what they are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a few questions now, some online questions as well. There are a couple addressed to Dr. Maria and Master Izzat. First, how and when do you perceive Sindoor to unfold? And in which domain? I think the Master Izzat hinted perspective on that, but so would you like to elaborate further?
I think the kinetic part of Operation Military Sindoor is not likely to continue or resume. But the information assault is continuing and will enhance further. So therefore, those who say that we should be prepared not only militarily, but also in the information domain are spot on.
Yeah, Dr. Maria.
Okay. Joseph, if you want to go ahead, it's fine.
Please.
I would tend to disagree that despite the fact that all logics on ground indicate that India should not go for Operation Sindoor 2.0, but in terms of the military developments in India, they are most likely to go for that. One is the notion of victory, which they failed to carve out after Operation Banyan Marsoos. So despite the fact that they might have won the elections in Bihar and they might have given this perception in India, but Hindu report, President Trump's statements consistently that actually Indian aircrafts were down, their ability and the space for them to create the notion of victory on ground has not actually been shortened. So the reality is that they have lost the war, and this is the reality which has hit India's defense production, it has hit India's doctrinal developments, and most importantly, there is also another trajectory which is underway in India. That is India's transformation from a British army trained and doctrinally revolving around that to a more American-based army. It is believed that by 2026, 60% of India's weapon systems would have American origin or Western origin. And this is based on scientific data. You can look at CIPRI reports, you can look at the defense acquisition patterns. So it's not just a question that they would be having American weapons. It also basically means that for these acquisitions to continue and for their CDF process to become actually integrated, they require new funds. And these funds basically also require a continuous process in which they are seen to be engaging with multiple territorial conflicts. And there has been a pattern since last 6 years where they have been engaging in pattern of war after every 6 to 8 months, which reconciles with their financial cycle. And this is something which will continue. So this is going to continue because one, they do want to transform. Number two, they want the necessary funds. And number three, that hegemonic space in which they were seeing themselves as the next security provider. And I think Ambassador Johar had very clearly said that Pakistan is the net security stabilizer now, not the net security provider which India had aimed to become, has come under big question marks. So in order to ensure that that position remains with them in Quad, that position remains with them, for them to become interoperable and as a key force in this area, they will need to come up with some kind of equality, if not hegemonic status. Unfortunately for them, they were unable to prevail on Pakistan militarily because of advanced training, planning, and execution. Hence, we will see this effort for continuously degrading and continuing with protracted warfare. Another aspect of Bani al-Marsus which people have not talked about, and we also rarely talk about, is the financial impact of Operation Bani al-Marsus on India's economy. Now, that economic effect basically has run in billions, not in millions. So this means that they have to regenerate investor confidence, they have to regenerate what has been affected as a result of a protracted conflict. And last but not least, the notion of victory becomes very important and the role of information operations. Now, the catch-22 was that India declared that what they did against Pakistan was counterterrorism operation. So they did not classify it as war. So the damage which they have faced cannot be repatriated as war damages. So this means that somewhere along the line, it needs to be recalibrated because of the impact of actually losing $1.2 billion worth S-400, not one battery, two batteries, multiple other, military targets which have cost in billions. So this means that the financial impact of Indian Airlines losing, lots of other defense sectors, they are most likely to recreate another cycle of war. How limited, how effective, whether they'll be able to create a notion of victory is still the catchy part, but for them, it's a question of survival. For their regime and for their military leadership to do this, so they will be compelled to carry out this action on ground.
I can add, financial losses can go either way. It can be a deterrence to enter into another round, particularly when international environment is not ready to accept their adventure. Or it can go the way Dr. Maria Sultan is saying, that they would like to engage and secure a kind of victory so that, but my sense is that it is the former, which is financial losses will prevent their government to go for another adventure, at least in the near future.
Thank you. We have a slightly varied perspective, but very insightful one. We now invite General Rabani to add his words of wisdom to that.
Just a very small little thing. I think that Operation Sindoor is continuing. It doesn't stop. While they are preparing for something big, which they shall, and which they would do, if not today, maybe a year later, 2 years later. But on the other hand, what is happening in Balochistan? What is happening in KPK? And that is translation of Operation Sindoor in yet another manner. And this is how it is done. This is how countries react against some other countries. We have been doing so in many ways in past, and now they are doing very effectively. So to me, Operation Sindoor continues. We need to be alert, and we need to see what all is happening in these two provinces. And then, of course, we need to be bothered about the technological advantage which they now would like to acquire and then gain and then apply on us as and when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you. No, that's the beauty of this discussion, like very different perspectives, I think a common theme. Now we have another question online as well. Will our engagement in Gulf affairs be a caveat, let alone fighting on multiple fronts? And how the US is expected to respond in such a scenario? Now that's a difficult one. Who would like to address that?
I think that is a brilliant question asked from academics. So this basically means we get to say everything and not take responsibility. Bani al-Marsus proved two things. One, that South Asia is no longer South Asia. Once the Israeli technologists actually came and flew those drones, the security architecture had expanded. So this basically means whether we like it or we don't like it, they participated in war. So when you participate in war, the lines are drawn. Second, the SDMA has, for the first time, linked us to the Middle East security architecture, not as a bystander, but as a player. So this means that you are, for the first time, also a Middle East power. Number three, that you're not going to fight this alone. SDMA did not come out from peacetime negotiations alone. It came during war. An airstrike on Qatar, in the close aftermath of airstrikes and war on Iran, and precluding that was Operation Bani al-Mansur. So it was a continuation of multiple air frontiers, war frontiers, which this region saw. Some of our own making and some of extra-regional mix. So SDMA, technically speaking, places Pakistan in a very strong position. The threats had already existed. The security posture was already at play. The only thing what you have managed to do is to secure your alliance, not a normal alliance, a military, strategic, economic alliance, which will allow you to move forward as a serious military, security, economic interlocutor in this region. The costs were there. Now the question is that since you have become a player, you will play in Libya, you will play in Sudan, you will play in terms of how Iran's future security dispensation will emerge. And I think another thing which none of us is perhaps witnessing has been the sudden lull, which we have also seen from Afghanistan. Their entire wave of terrorism which we were facing has suddenly seen a pushback, which has been a combination of diplomacy, combination of hit back and response of your security military relationship with Saudi Arabia, with Iran, and also with the region. So it is for the first time given Pakistan a Middle East identity, whether we like it or we don't like it. This is an identity which will definitely help us to secure our national interests much better than what we had feared earlier. Earlier, we were fighting all wars only by ourselves. Now, at least, we have some others who will be fighting that. And what about the United States? This is a catch-22 for the United States. The catch-22 is this, that if they do not do anything, then they will continuously lose their military space in the Middle East. Although the United States space at this moment is uncontested because of the military bases, because of the defense pact, because of the economic overlaps, but these three military strikes against Pakistan, Iran, and Qatar has signaled to the region that the United States may perhaps not be a very solid partner during war. And that means that defense has to be based on self-reliant and bilateral actions between powers which are equal rather than powers which are not equal. So this is for the first time, the global South is redefining military power and strategic understanding. Will the United States favor Israel? Yes, they will, because they are in a defense military alliance with Israel. A defense military alliance which predates even the creation of Israel itself. So if we are expecting a defense military alliance where it says an attack on Israel will be considered an attack on the United States, and an attack on the United States will be considered an attack on Israel, should be replaced with their security military arrangements with the Middle East, is not going to happen. So long Israel remains a threat in the region, so long Iran-Israel conflict does not come to a gradual understanding and a gradual standstill, this is going to be a catch-22. Under President Trump, perhaps it would not be so dangerous for Pakistan or even for Saudi Arabia, but under a different administration, we will look at a very different roadmap.
My understanding of the question was that the questioner is asking, can Pakistan afford to fight simultaneously on multiple fronts, i.e., India, Afghanistan, the Gulf? Perhaps one could add Gaza. So I think that's the question that we have posed. My own sense is that Pakistan will fight only its own wars and not others' wars, which means that aggression from India has to be countered through self-reliance. With Afghanistan, we can manage, and I think already things are looking up, and we should continue that strategy of better managing the border, although it is involving some losses, financial losses to investors and traders on both sides. But this cost is much less than the cost of shedding blood of Pakistanis that the GDPs were doing. As for Saudi Arabia, it is a defensive agreement. You would recall that in March 2015, when Saudi Arabia launched military strikes on Yemen, Pakistan did not join that. And there were some unpleasant moments between the two countries, but because it came as a matter of policy from the people of Pakistan through their parliament, the Saudis understood it. And I think the same thing will happen this time. If Saudi Arabia is aggressed against, particularly the holy shrines, Pakistan will stand shoulder to shoulder. But as for its operations elsewhere, or Pakistan's operations elsewhere, aggressions anywhere, I don't think this agreement will hold. So Pakistan, yes, Pakistan can maintain its defense towards east and west, and I think we are already doing it well. But of course, this is an effort that will continue.
So the next question is by Hamza Rifat, who heads the Central Asia program at IRF. The question is addressed to Ambassador Izzat again, and I think it will draw upon the experience as their boy in Washington some years ago. Is Pakistan's reset with Washington DC vis-a-vis India more about the Trump administration's orientation towards foreign relations and personality style, rather than anything strategic for US-Pakistan relations? Can such an equation be potentially offended if the Democrat or any other Republican president comes into power in DC?
Absolutely. I have no doubt that this is a transactional disenchantment between the United States and India, and they are natural partners and will be together again. I think the establishment in the US has invested heavily in India, and they are not going to give that up to become a sort of counterbalance to China. Yes, there is a setback by May 2025, and also by a re-calibration of Trump administration of the role that the US is required to play as manifested in the US national security strategy, which has just come out, whereby the US would not like to entangle itself in distant conflicts and would like to protect essentially the Western Hemisphere. That said, the selective engagements of the US in the world will continue. That would include probably Ukraine to an extent, Gaza and Israel, and also Pakistan, India. So that, yes, I should anticipate that this might happen sooner than we know, perhaps towards the end of Trump administration, and certainly after Trump administration is gone.
Any of the other panelists would like to add to that? Okay, so next question. Yes, please.
My name is
Yeah, and please stand up so.
Sitting for too long. My name is Naeem Murtaza, and I'm an alumni of the National Defense University, the National Security Workshop. My question to Dr. Maria is based on her thoughts that, taking the cue from General Saab that Operation Sindoor is on, but it bothers me to understand that how will India fix up its air force Like you said, Dr. Maria, it can happen tomorrow, it can happen next year. In terms of a war situation, my understanding of the, the description that you highlighted has taken maybe a decade for us to prepare. It was not something that happened yesterday. So how would the Indian Air Force be prepared in such a short time to be able to execute something in a year or even 2 years? Thank you.
Dr. Maria?
Thank you very much for that question. First of all, we need to understand what has actually happened. They say that the nature of warfare doesn't changes. It's the characters which displays different, different shades at times. It is true. What we fought was a war. What India alluded to was an operation. So it becomes extremely important in terms of how it is contextualized. And what I basically argued was the notion of victory and notion of defeat. Once they even got that missile, which was across Pakistan, which failed missile, that was also part which they later on, they said that we were not so sure and it just went on its own and so on and so forth. But according to some military strategists, it was a very pre-calculated act. And in this operation also, what was very interesting was that once you define a conflict, you get bound by the parameters of that definition. Because they defined it as an operation, the land mobilization was not ready for an offensive. This was primarily a very interesting offensive, which was air, missile, naval. You did not see the land mobilization beyond Pakistani territory, and we did not see land mobilization beyond Indian territory. We did see target engagement on the line of control. We did see target engagement by India on Pakistani-India border, but we did not see essentially anything beyond the borders. So what we are looking at is an entire revolution in military thought, where operations and offensive is being designed in single domain, not in multi-domain. While the thrust is multi-domain, but the operational impact is considered in single domain. So in future, it could be on three bases. One is the satellite space program. Something which we don't talk a lot about is the fact that the US Department of Defense actually sets aside a certain portion of their space-based budget for India's space-based capability. This is hard facts, number one. Number two, if they're going to fight a high rising or a very precision high mountainous warfare, can they do that? Perhaps not. But are they preparing for it? Yes. The different exercises which they have been doing, whatever they have been doing, it is there. Traditionally, there are lots of military strategists in the room. So traditionally, we have always anticipated India in the south, never in the north. But the doctrinal disposition, which we're looking at on ground, is indicating that they want to create a collusive threat between India, between China and Pakistan. And that basically means Azad Jammu and Kashmir. That could be one potential front, a high mountainous war. Whether that would be integrated or not, whether the Air Force would manage to come forward or not, that's another part of the story. But we do understand there is Bika, Kamkasa, and all of that. That basically means that the US armed forces are also interoperable between Indian and those forces. So first of all, we need to understand that India is not going to fight this war on its own unitary strength. Induction of Israel, the importance of India's defense corridor and security corridor now, which includes India, Israel, and UAE, is another manifestation which we are going to look at. Third, it could also happen from Afghanistan's frontier. So when we're looking at warfare, please understand it is not geographically dispositioned towards India. It is going to be dispositioned in terms of which theater India can operate, with which multiple partners and which domains. So the traditional concept of how we understand war may not be a linear projection which you will see at play, but you will see a multi-integrated, multi-domain, multi-theater, and multi-front war, which can be used at display. And once you connect that with international organizations and multilateral systems, then the impact can be created in a very different way. And that is what we will be looking at. Like, just to give you statistics over here, the OD attacks we all talk about, and when Pakistan countered that, what was the net effect on us? The net effect on us was also the cost of mobilization in terms of our CAS patrol, in terms of others. And we also saw immediately at that time, FATF, which came through and put lots of sanctions on Pakistan. So the economic impact was shifted from the kinetic domain to a non-kinetic domain. So when we talk about hybrid and we talk about all of that, that is the future of warfare, and that is something which they've written and they joined the defense doctrine in 2017, and that is something which they've been working effectively on since 2017. So this is 2025 and 2026 effectively. So they're fought by their own defense cycles, by their own needs, and also the transitions in terms of how they will implement. And last but not least, which I wanted to highlight in my presentation was that the acme of skill which we saw was the 15-minute total, sensor to shooter matrix, which we overwhelmed and we contributed. Now, how will we verify that? How will we integrate all these multi-theaters is going to be something which we have to consider for the future. So India does have options. It could also be something in the south. It could be in the naval domain. It could be in the space domain. So we need to move away from a land-dominated strategy to a multi-domain strategy, which might outplay. So the possibility of war will remain alive. Their ability to use their allies' capabilities will also remain, and their ability to shift between domains will become a reality against which we need to prepare. So it means Pakistan needs to be much more advanced in the naval operations. We need to be much more integrated in our land and military operations. And I think here the Office of the CDF is going to play an important role, precisely because of the nature of the integrated operations of military attacks in the future.
Thank you for a very comprehensive reply, Dr. Maria. On a lighter note, जब आपने कहा ना last but not the least, no worries. तो मुझे आपकी स्पीच में याद आ गया कि कितनी बार आपने कहा
I'm just thinking whether they're across the life or not.
वैसे इजाजत like to
Last but not the least, नहीं मुर्तजा साहब, आपका जो सवाल था, the way I understood was कि if we took decades to prepare for our offensive defense, then India would need more time. I have no difference on what she described as India's possible strategy of multi-domain operation next time. But I tend to agree with Janasar that while India is preparing for whenever that next assault happens, India will step up and has stepped up the hybrid warfare against Pakistan, which basically means covert warfare through proxies. And we can see the evidence of that through BLA and TTP activities. Earlier, India had even carried out target assassinations in Pakistan from 2020 to 2023, at least 20 of them. But I see some good news there. Good news is that ever since we have started managing the border, or closing the border with Afghanistan, TTP and their Afghan abettors are finding it difficult. And their Indian sponsors are finding it difficult to send in the assassins in Pakistan or the terrorists. And something good news on the Iran front also, where from BLO was mostly coming in. Because in the June 12-day war that Iran had with Israel, it learned something about India's role and its connections with Israel. And one must note that Iranian parliament offered its profound thanks to Pakistan, tashakkur, and also the Iranian president Pezeshkian stood on the UN General Assembly podium to say publicly that they welcome the Pak-Saudi agreement, something that we could not have expected. So it is my sense that Iran will now come down more heavily on Indian sponsorship of the BLA and BRA and other elements. So Pakistan is in good shape. We should continue the policies that we have adopted and perhaps speed them up. But I am more optimistic at this time of our capacity to deal with these changes, these challenges.
Thank you, Ambassador Dar, for adding a very heartening dimension to that. General Rubani, would you like to? Okay, great. Wonderful. So, in the interest of time, because, we're supposed to be closing at 1, and I'm sure everybody's waiting for lunch. Before I invite the Executive Director General for closing remarks, I'd like to invite you all to join me in a big hand of applause for our panel today. Well, for the closing remarks, Executive Director General, ISA, Ms. Imrana.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's wrap up this session today. And as we conclude today's dialogue on Indian aggression and Pakistan's strategic response, it's vital to reflect on key insights. Pakistan remains committed to safeguarding sovereignty, defending borders, and protecting its people against all kinds of aggression, whether it's physical, psychological, or informational. Our discussion reaffirms Pakistan's security posture is driven by deterrence and self-defense, not hostility. We seek peace, stability, and constructive relations with neighbors, but not at the cost of our dignity and integrity. As we wrap up 2025, a very important year, where Pakistan successfully countered Indian aggression in May, we are reminded of our resilience. Pakistan's strength lies in national cohesion. Government, armed forces, leadership, and people stand united. Our armed forces, backed by public trust, are prepared across all domains: land, air, sea, cyber, info, to counter challenges. We balance strength with restraint, recognizing escalation risk in this nuclearized region. In closing, Pakistan desires peace, but is fully prepared to defend itself. Unity, purpose, credible deterrence guide us towards security and regional stability. In the end, we extend our sincere gratitude to our panelists, to our Ambassador Johar Salim, Ambassador Azad Ahmed, Lieutenant General Khalid Rabani, and Dr. Maria Sultan. And of course, our moderator, Dr. Usman Nasir. Thank you very much for your participation and for the insightful discourse. And a big thanks to Institute of Regional Studies for their valuable contribution to this dialogue. And last but not the least, I would like to specially thank the officers and staff of Information Service Academy, whose efforts make this even possible. Now I'm quite sure that we'll be able to complete the dialogue series in the next 6 months, and we'll make it another success story of this academy. Thank you all for your participation. Pakistan Zindabad.
Thank you, madam. Now I request you please present souvenirs to the panelists. At the same time, acknowledge the role of Sayyid Moran Sultan for making all this happen today. Okay, first I request Ambassador Johar Salim, President IRIS, to receive his souvenir from Executive Director General ISA, Mr. Rana Wazir. Now, our next panelist, General Khalid Ravani sir, please receive your souvenir. Next is Ambassador Azad Ahmed Chaudhary, former Foreign Secretary. Sir, please receive your souvenir. And then Dr. Mali Sultan, please come on the stage and get the souvenir. Thank you. Small announcement for the group photo with the ISA, EDG, and the team. All the panelists, please, for the group photo. And my talk too.
रिकॉर्डिंग मंत्री कैमरे का बैग उधर दिखाई पड़ा सबका बैग भी